was, if you believe from what Frank Warren said, was setting the table here, the easiest fight to make, 50-50, Tyson Fury versus Oleksandr Usyk for the undisputed heavyweight titles. It now appears to be completely off the table, which is a shame. Boxing fans hat on here. That's a fight we all want to see. Tell me, you've been involved in negotiations like this. What goes on behind the scenes, and why do you feel the fight hasn't been made?
So we've negotiated at length with both Team Fury and Team Usyk, and I can tell you very clearly there's one side that's very easy to deal with, and there's one side that's very hard to deal with. And you have to be a rocket scientist to figure out where that falls. Look, and again, I'm speaking to you as a fan here because we've got no involvement in either side. I find it incredibly frustrating, completely demoralizing, to be completely honest, because I just worry, right, to be completely open, about the long-term health of our sport if the biggest and best fights don't get made and the best fighters aren't fighting each other. Because what other sport on the planet is successful where the best aren't competing against the best? And the reason why they're not competing is really down to ego. And it's not even politics at this point, because those you've seen, you probably saw the Frank Warren and Alex Krasik on TalkSport. You maybe not, but they were on the phone together at the same time on that show. There's not promoter politics involved there. They both want to make the fight happen. It's really, from what I can see, coming down to greed and ego on Tyson's side, and when something like that is holding up, what should be a really special and crowning moment for our sport, I just find it completely, demoralizing, and it's so frustrating to see, and it unfortunately keeps happening. There has to be a way going forward where fighters probably are taking less ego to the table, and there's less politics amongst promoters. Just as a little side note, the argument that Tyson is giving, I don't think is unreasonable. He is definitely bringing more value to that fight, monetarily and commercially, than Usyk is. But at the same time, and I think people need to realize this, even when you are the champion and you're the A side and you're bringing the lion's share in a negotiation, and a negotiation like this, even then you still have to bring an element of compromise to the table, and you have to be willing to compromise. For what it sounds like he's trying to have Usyk's pants down completely and entirely. And Usyk, yes, commercially doesn't bring as much value to the table, but he holds 3 of the 4 belts that are on the line. This is a fight for undisputed. These are 2 number 1 best heavyweights in the world. So I think he's entitled to not have his pants. He still wants to be treated with respect and fairly. And so he compromised by giving Tyson 70-30. All there needs is a little bit of compromise from Tyson in return, and this fight can get made. But his ego is getting in the way of it. And so, I just think we have to, as a sport, figure out a way where fighters and or promoters are able to work together in a more efficient way and a more kind of open and willing way. Otherwise, this problem is going to keep happening. And what's going to happen, and who really suffers from this firstly, is the fans. And what's going to happen as a result of it, they'll switch off. Because I work in boxing, and it's my livelihood, and I love the sport to death. But if I'm a fan in this situation, I think boxing's a fucking joke. It's embarrassing. I'll go and watch UFC, because guess what? In the UFC, the best fight the best like that. So I think it's a real actual, even outside of this Fury Usyk thing, which is a mess, because you've seen it with Spence Crawford as well. There's a number of other examples. Mayweather Pacquiao was over marinated. Brooke Khan over marinated. So there's a number of different examples for it, but I think as a sport, it's something we really need to look at. Otherwise, long term, I fear, for the popularity and the number of people that are going to be tuning in, because it's just become a bit of a farce otherwise.
Yeah, I think you've summed up, speaking a lot there, public opinion on this subject. Alex Krasik spoke to Danny Flexen here. He also spoke to IFL in the aftermath of the fight now being off. And one of the interesting things he said was Usyk would have been earning 3 times less than what he'd earned against Anthony Joshua, which kind of, you've dealt with Tyson Fury. Is he that level of draw? Is that what kind of helps to scupper a deal because there's not that money or extra money to play with and give that leeway here? Is that the case, you feel, as a strong part to making this fight fall apart?
So Krasik said that for the 70-30 split, Usyk was only 3 times less than okay. Potentially. I mean, Tyson is a big draw, but I still don't think he's as big a draw as Anthony Joshua is. From a buys perspective, from an eyes perspective. So, I don't think Tyson is as big a draw as he says he is. But like I said, I'm not even sure with Tyson it was necessarily about the money that he wanted to earn in the 70-30 split. Like he's quite a volatile character, and part of me almost thinks that it was more literally purely just an ego thing, that he wanted to feel like he'd completely had those guys over a barrel, like, because again he's incredibly wealthy. I don't know if an extra few million quid here or there makes much of a difference. So look, yeah, I don't know. I've not been involved in negotiations in an intimate way, so I'm not sure how the numbers would add up. But it doesn't surprise me for if Krasik says that Usyk was going to be earning 3 times less, even with that split, because I don't think that Tyson is as big a draw as AJ is, even still. So maybe Tyson needs to remember that a bit.
Like you mentioned, you've dealt with both teams before. Dealing with both teams, we want to see Joshua and Tyson Fury eventually fight each other. Eddie Hearn seems to think this might open the door for those two to finally clash. Maybe there's not a lot of confidence in that, but look, I'm speaking to the guy that works with Joshua very closely. Will we see that fight soon between Tyson Fury and Joshua?
Look, who knows? This is boxing, right? Like, to try and predict what's happening in 6 months is virtually impossible. From our side, we've tried to make this fight happen a number of times, and I think have acted reasonably on every single time that we've come to the table. The last time at the end of last year was just a complete joke, and I think people can probably see now that it's quite clear that Tyson never really intended on making that fight happen, just with the artificial deadlines he was setting and the nonsense he was coming out with, compared to the amount of time that they've given even Usyk now to try and make this fight happen. So I still absolutely firmly believe that fight will happen one day. What I don't want to happen is that it's one of those ones, again, talking about Brooke Khan, for example, which is over marinated and it doesn't happen at its absolute peak. So again, you haven't got to ask AJ twice. Anybody that you put forward to him, he will genuinely, the God's honest truth is say yes, take that fight, no problem. So there's no problem on AJ's side. We're pretty easy to deal with from a negotiation standpoint. We just want to be fair, So from what I can see, the only person that stops that fight from happening is Tyson. But I believe that Tyson wants it as well. The only thing that I'm scared of now is that, say we did go into these conversations in the summer, for example, I dread to think what the hell kind of demands Tyson's going to be making, on AJ. And this is what, again, when I'm going back to that point where if these fights are going to get made, Tyson has to understand that there still needs to be an element of compromise from his side. You can't have every single thing your own way. So look, I believe that fight still will happen, most definitely. Does it happen this summer, this year? I'd love to say yes, but you just, who knows the way that the world goes. So we'll have to just wait and see. But most definitely before they retire, that fight's going to happen.
Finally, I'll leave off with, and retirement is a good word, Derek Chisora. Last seen in the ring against Tyson Fury, retirement was brought into question again. At the moment it seems to be he's having a bit of fun doing some promotional work over in Saudi Arabia. I've heard one or two things about him potentially fighting again, but what is Derek Chisora's next steps? Will we see him back in the ring?
Look, again, time will tell. We'll have to wait and see. Fundamentally, that's going to be Derek's decision and Derek's decision only to make. One thing that we've done since his last fight in December is keep him as active as possible and as busy as possible with stuff that's not necessarily involved with him being in the ring. I think, like you said, like you alluded to, the Saudi show where he was, there was a deal done for him to essentially act as a kind of promoter, ambassador for that show and stuff, is something that he really, really enjoyed. We're setting up a podcast for him and trying to get a book off the ground. So our main focus since that December bout has been to just generate opportunities for Derek outside of, not outside of boxing, but outside of the ring and involved with him actually fighting. But as I said, and as I always say, the fighters are the boss, and whatever the fighter wants to do, the fighter is going to go and do. So if Derek comes to us and says that he wants to fight again, then look, that's a conversation that we have to have as a team, and we see where we go. Like as I've said to you, when you have a personal relationship with these guys, and it's no reflection on like their ability to still compete or whatever, but I always like to see boxers get in and get out as quickly as possible and not hang around longer than they need to. But I can't make that decision for Derek. So whatever he wants to do, he will go and do. As yet, he hasn't said anything to us about wanting to get back in the ring or wanting to fight, officially. So we'll have to just see how it plays out. But I'm loving seeing the stuff that he's doing out in Saudi. I've seen the stuff where he was compared to Salt Bae, because have you seen that? Because he was with everybody. He's getting pictures with everybody, which I thought was amazing. So he's such a wonderful character, Derek. He's so entertaining and so engaging that I actually think there's so much stuff that you can do after boxing to keep himself busy and to have a career for himself, because I think he's the sort of character that people really warm to, and he's actually very engaging and fun to watch. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
A Derek Chisora podcast sounds like a must watch.
Right, I think that's a great idea. The guest that we could get on there, because he's a very well connected man, Derek. He makes friends with everybody. So yeah, we'll have an announcement on that shortly. But yeah, that's exciting.
Looking forward to the announcement. Looking forward to seeing Big Fraze back in the ring this weekend. Will, it's been a real pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for speaking to Seconds Out. Speak again soon, sir.
Sounds good, man. Thank you very
much. Cheers.